Hey guys, tonight you find yourself standing at the edge of a misty, shimmering sea. The water stretches farther than your eyes can follow, reflecting a sky painted in soft violet and amber. A gentle fog rolls across the surface, blurring the line between horizon and ocean, making you feel as if you've stepped into a dream someone whispered into the wind. You probably wouldn't survive this well, at least not without some gentle guidance and a cozy blanket, but that's exactly why you're here, and why I'm going to guide you through it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, leave a comment with your location and local time. It's oddly comforting to know who's traveling through lost continents with us tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is how calm the air feels, as though the mist itself carries a secret patience. Waves lap quietly against hidden reefs, each ripple like a soft sigh. You can feel the salt faintly in the air, but it isn't sharp or biting, just a gentle seasoning on the landscape. Your bare feet, or whatever you imagined yourself standing in, pressed lightly against the sand, which is cool and slightly damp, holding impressions for just long enough to see footprints disappear, as if time itself is playful here. The outlines of land barely pierce the fog. You can make out shapes, low hills, curved ridges, maybe structures, but everything is softened, like watercolor sketches left in the rain. This is the lost continent of Mu, or at least what remains of it in whispers and shadows. You can't tell if it's truly gone, or just hiding, and part of the magic is that you're not supposed to know yet. As you walk forward, the water edges your toes and slips back with polite reluctance, like a host nudging you along without rushing you. You notice small shells clinging to rocks, tiny spirals and ridges, delicate as lace. Maybe someone walked here before you. Maybe centuries have passed. Time behaves differently here. You learn quickly that curiosity is safer than haste. One widely accepted historical fact is that the idea of Mu originated with 19th century theorists like Augustus Laplandjian, who claimed ancient Maya texts referenced a lost Pacific continent. You feel that historical grounding, even if faintly, like an anchor in the mist. A lesser-known detail is how later writers, especially James Chward, expanded the continent into a sprawling civilization with advanced technology and culture, blending imagination and mythology almost seamlessly. Historians still wonder if any of these claims could be based on no lost knowledge, or if they're simply the product of human fascination with what disappears beneath the waves. Your senses sharpen as you notice details that shouldn't be noticed. Tiny ripples in the fog suggest movement far out at sea. A shadow beneath the water, just a blur, might be a submerged ruin, a fish, or your imagination playing tricks. That's part of the gentle joke of exploring Mu. The mind fills in gaps like sand in a tide pool, creating stories almost as quickly as reality presents them. You take a deep breath, tasting the soft salt and mist, and feel a subtle warmth in your chest. This isn't fear. It's anticipation. There's humor here to standing at the edge of a lost world, knowing centuries of scholars have argued about whether it existed at all. And yet, here you are, imagining it vividly. Toes wet, mist curling in your hair. Soft light begins to illuminate shapes in the fog. Could be mountains, could be buildings, could be dreams given form. You tiptoe closer to the shapes, careful not to disturb the delicate hush that blankets the continent. Each step feels deliberate, almost ceremonial. Movement here isn't urgent. It's thoughtful, measured, like the gentle turn of pages in a book that was never finished but always remembered. And then, as the sun lowers slightly, giving everything a golden haze, you notice the first hint of Mu's culture, carvings on stones just at the water's edge, spirals, curves, symbols almost smiling at you. It's quiet artistry, small and intimate. You realize this is a civilization that valued subtlety, a society that whispered its achievements rather than shouted them. The light shifts slowly, shadows lengthen and blend. The water, the sand, the ruins, they all feel like a single, continuous organism breathing softly under your gaze. You notice a breeze carrying an unidentifiable scent, like wet earth mixed with tropical flowers. You inhale slowly, letting it fill you. Humor returns lightly. This is the sort of adventure that sounds dramatic, but is entirely safe from the comfort of your armchair or bed. By now, you've begun to notice the small inconsistencies. The way water moves differently around certain rocks. The faint echoes of a wave that shouldn't be there. The delicate patterns in the sand that feel deliberate, not random. A lesser-known detail is that these minor curiosities were exactly the type of observations early theorists used to justify the existence of Mu, tracing myth from mere patterns in nature. Historians still debate whether these patterns were meaningful, misread, or simply coincidence, a gentle reminder that part of this journey is embracing uncertainty. You pause at the edge of a shallow pool, peering down at tiny reflections of the fog, sky, and ruins. You realize Mu has a rhythm, soft and persistent, like a heartbeat beneath the waves. You step back slightly, allowing yourself to feel the wonder without rushing. Toward answers, the lost continent is patient. It doesn't need validation. It waits. And you, by some small miracle, are allowed to watch. Humor surfaces again as you notice a small crab scuttling near your toes, completely unconcerned by the weighty mysteries of vanished civilizations. The incongruity makes you smile, a reminder that life, mythical, historical, or merely crustacean, is always quietly moving. You settle on a nearby rock, letting your legs dangle toward the water, and feel the gentle pulse of anticipation in the air. The mist thickens slightly, softening edges, blending reality and imagination. You can almost hear the whispers of Mu stories carried by wind, water, and memory. And as you sit, breathing slowly, you feel the first true sense of the journey you've embarked upon. This isn't about proving existence. It's about experiencing disappearance, noticing beauty in what remains, and finding calm in mystery. You realize that the lost continent of Mu doesn't demand answers. It asks only for your attention, your curiosity, and your quiet company. The water stretches on, calm and glassy, but you know there's more beneath it than meets the eye. You step carefully onto a small rise of stone, just breaking the surface. Around you, the remnants of Mu's architecture peek from the waves' columns, steps, and partially submerged walls. The fog curls around them like a protective veil, softening sharp edges and lending everything a gentle, dreamlike quality. You almost expect a mermaid to rise and politely offer directions, but instead you hear only the soft sigh of the ocean brushing against stone. You crouch down, tracing the worn grooves in a column with your fingers. They're smooth, worn by time, salt, and water, yet the patterns are still discernible. Spirals, geometric lines, and subtle carvings that suggest more than decoration. They suggest meaning, intention, a culture that wanted to communicate softly across centuries. It's easy to imagine the hands that carved them, careful and deliberate, moving with quiet purpose under a warm sun long before the waves claimed this land. One widely accepted historical fact is that the concept of Mu includes ruins seen in the Pacific, particularly in legends of submerged structures that explorers occasionally interpreted as evidence of lost civilizations. While modern archaeology does not support an actual sunken continent, the allure of ruins beneath water has inspired countless imaginations. You bend closer to the water and see how reflections distort the shapes, making them appear even older, even more mysterious. A lesser-known detail is that some of the supposed Mu ruins might have inspired maps, artworks, and stories across the Pacific. From Polynesia to Central America, blending myth with early observation. Historians still wonder if these connections were intentional cultural memory or merely coincidence, a playful reminder that sometimes the world itself conspires to tell a story. You notice the water's movement. It laps gently at the stones, nudging them as though encouraging patience. It seems impossible that something so fluid could erase centuries of structure. Yet here, it does so silently and persistently. You can imagine the first inhabitants carefully choosing stone placement. The angles of temples, the paths through courtyards, all designed to last. All designed to withstand gentle but relentless change. There's humor in your imagination running wild. A sunken library with waterproof books, perhaps, or a submerged marketplace where fish trade shells for tiny trinkets. You laugh softly at the absurdity, feeling the comfort that comes from knowing you're alone with your curiosity and no one is rushing you to conclusions. You trace the outline of a larger structure across the water, an entire complex partially visible above the tide. Columns rise like the fingers of a giant hand, beckoning you to explore slowly, respectfully. You realize you are learning the rhythm of Mu, not by walking through it, but by observing it with care. This is a place that rewards gentle attention, patience, and quiet observation. Another fascinating detail emerges. Some theories suggest that the supposed ruins of Mu were built with precise alignments to the sun and stars, not for grand ceremonies, but to subtly track seasons and tides. Whether true or legend, you feel the meticulous thought behind each stone placement. Historians still debate if these alignments were accidental, symbolic, or functional, a reminder that even ancient builders were as playful and inventive as anyone. The fog drifts closer, curling round your shoulders, wrapping you in a cool, damp embrace. You breathe it in and let it settle your mind. Each breath carries a faint scent of seaweed and salt, a reminder that Mu is both here and elsewhere, present in imagination as much as in reality. You step closer to the largest submerged wall and run your fingers over carvings shaped like waves, spirals, and stars. They feel alive under your touch, as if the stone itself remembers the hands that shaped it. Soft humor returns when you imagine an ancient Mu resident observing you now, squinting and nodding approvingly at your careful steps. "Not bad," you whisper, smiling, knowing that the past doesn't demand perfection, just attention. You start to notice the subtle differences between each submerged ruin. One set of steps leads nowhere. Another aligns perfectly with a faint line of sunlight breaking through the fog. The water's surface creates illusions, merging reality with reflection, teaching you that perception is fluid. You might never know what is true, but in Mu that doesn't matter. The journey is in the noticing. As the tide shifts, the ruins appear to breathe, rising slightly with the water, then settling again. You lean against a stone and feel the connection between earth, water, and imagination. This is not a dramatic reveal. It is a quiet revelation, the kind that eases your mind while gently pulling you deeper into the story of a world that vanished yet lingers in subtle traces. By now, the sun has dipped lower, casting golden highlights across the water. Shadows deepen the recesses of columns and steps, inviting you to explore further or simply to sit and absorb the beauty. The ocean laps with a rhythmic whisper, punctuating your thoughts with soft punctuation. You realize the magic of Mu is not just in what disappeared, but in how its memory lingers quietly, insistently, gently. You take a cautious step off the submerged stones and find yourself on slightly higher ground, where the mist thins just enough to reveal hints of habitation. Though much of Mu is hidden beneath the waves, traces of the people who lived here remain. Delicate and unassuming, like footprints pressed into damp sand that time refuses to erase. You sense their presence more than see it in the curves of a wall, the spacing of a doorway, or the careful placement of stones that once supported roofs, now gone. One widely accepted historical fact is that the concept of Mu describes a civilization advanced in imagination and culture, if not in rarefied archaeology, with people depicted as thoughtful and technologically capable. You feel as though you are walking among their shadows, learning the rhythm of their lives in small, intimate increments rather than grand, sweeping gestures. The first thing that strikes you is the meticulousness of daily life. Pathways are lined with small stones arranged in deliberate patterns. You bend to examine them, realizing the arrangement is not random. It's functional, possibly guiding water flow, or maybe just marking a path. Even the smallest details, spirals, carved symbols speak of care. A lesser-known detail is that some stories suggest Mu's inhabitants prioritized subtle artistry in their utilitarian objects, blending beauty with function. Historians still wonder if this aesthetic choice was cultural preference, spiritual practice, or a method to encode information for posterity. You notice the remnants of small dwellings, low walls, partially intact foundations. Spaces clearly divided for work, cooking, and rest. The air smells faintly of salt and stone, and your ears catch the distant lap of water against ruins, almost like a lullaby. You imagine families moving softly through these spaces, children learning to navigate their world without fear, adults performing daily tasks with quiet deliberation. As you wander, you come across a small garden plot, slightly raised and lined with worn stones. Plants now, ghostly impressions, were once tended with care. Even after centuries, the land retains the memory of cultivation, as if the soil itself remembers careful hands. There's a gentle humor in imagining someone long ago grumbling at stubborn roots, or laughing quietly when seedlings thrived against the odds. You notice signs of communal spaces, wide areas where people may have gathered, stones arranged in circles, remnants of seating carved directly into the ground. These places hint at social life, at discussions, celebrations, and shared stories that required no documentation beyond memory and presence. You feel the weight of quiet observation here. Life is structured without strict instruction, organized without rigid control, and communicated without words when necessary. Another intriguing detail emerges. Some theorists suggest Mu had symbolic art built into the very layout of its settlements, encoding knowledge of the stars, tides, or natural cycles into the architecture. Whether literal or speculative, you feel it in the careful angles, repeated curves, and orientations of walls and pathways. Historians still debate whether these alignments were intentional, functional, or coincidental, a mystery that keeps your imagination quietly active. A small breeze ruffles the mist and carries a faint floral aroma, perhaps a remnant of gardens or orchards. You pause, imagining inhabitants strolling through this fragrant air, exchanging greetings, tending crops, laughing softly at small domestic mishaps. Humor is embedded in life itself. You think, not as a spectacle, but as a gentle companion to work and play. You crouch to inspect a small, carved symbol on a stone. It's a spiral, deeply etched, its purpose unclear. Was it decorative, spiritual, or practical? You can't say, but in Mu, not knowing is part of the charm. Mystery is built into the daily experience, teaching patience, observation, and humility. The day stretches onward, light shifting and playing across ruins and water alike. You notice how the people of Mu seem to have lived in harmony with their surroundings, balancing the mundane and the magical, the practical and the aesthetic. The ruins themselves whisper lessons in soft, persistent tones, structure, care, and gentle attention. As evening approaches, the mist thickens again, casting everything in muted lavender and gold. You sense life moving gently through time, not in dramatic leaps, but in continuous, measured rhythms. Here, in these quiet spaces, survival, culture, and imagination coexist seamlessly, leaving behind traces that invite you to notice, to wonder, and to breathe slowly. The air grows heavier with a faint, sweet scent, as if the wind carries remnants of incense or flowers once tended by hands long gone. You walk slowly along the remnants of a pathway, and the ground beneath your feet hums softly with memory, as though the soil itself remembers ceremonial steps. In the distance, you see subtle arrangements of stones that suggest ritual spaces, small altars, carefully placed rocks, and depressions carved into the earth. Nothing is grandiose. Everything is quiet, deliberate, and designed to blend with the natural surroundings. Hey, you probably wouldn't survive performing these rituals exactly as intended, but that's not the point. You're here to observe, to imagine, and to absorb the rhythm of a culture that revered connection over spectacle. One widely accepted historical fact is that Mu's imagined inhabitants were depicted by theorists as deeply spiritual, with rituals tied to the sun, stars, and water cycles. This isn't dramatic ritual theatre, it's a daily, gentle practice woven into life itself. A closer inspection reveals carvings of spirals, concentric circles, and flowing lines that seem to echo movement, tides, wind, and celestial patterns. You bend down, tracing a spiral with your fingertip. The stone is smooth under your touch, softened by years of wind and water. A lesser-known detail is that some stories claim these carvings doubled as guides for planting cycles or navigational markers, a subtle fusion of practical knowledge and spiritual expression. Historians still wonder whether these symbols were originally practical, ceremonial, or a little bit of both, a delightful ambiguity that fits the soft rhythm of Mu. You notice small pools of water reflecting the sky, perfectly still. A single ripple moves across the surface as if teasing you, a reminder that the land and water are in constant dialogue. You imagine inhabitants kneeling beside these pools, whispering thanks, making small offerings, or quietly observing their reflections, learning from the water as much as from one another. It's a quiet, tender type of spirituality, one that doesn't demand belief but encourages attentiveness. The light shifts, casting long shadows across the stonework, softening lines and curves. You walk among the ruins, noticing traces of what might have been small statues, faint carvings in walls, and the remains of simple tools left behind. Each piece tells a story without words, offering glimpses into daily reverence. There's humor in imagining someone polishing a small idol and muttering complaints about how it never quite faces the right way, a tiny, human touch amidst the ancient silence. Patterns repeat. You see arrangements of stones forming gentle circles, triangular markers aligned subtly with the rising sun, and faint depressions suggesting places to kneel or sit. These are the bones of a belief system that seems to respect both earth and sky, work and reflection. You can sense the calm discipline, ritual as a method of attunement rather than display, a way to remain in harmony with the world. A curious detail arises in your mind. Some accounts of Mu suggest that certain ceremonies occurred in near silence, emphasizing observation over spoken words. You feel the effect immediately. silence becomes tangible, a companion to the mist and waves. Historians still debate whether silence was a spiritual choice, a practical necessity, or simply a storytelling embellishment. But for you, it's profoundly soothing. You crouch near a circle of stones, imagining the gentle murmurs of participants long gone. Perhaps they counted rhythms of waves, winds, or seasons. Perhaps they listened to each other, to the environment, to the whisper of life around them. Humor flickers quietly in the mind's eye, imagining someone accidentally knocking over a stone and earning a soft, knowing glance instead of scolding. Respect, yes, but with warmth. Even as the day wanes, the ceremonial spaces retain a presence, a quiet pulse. You begin to understand that in Mu, spirituality was not separate from daily life, which was woven into the act of living. Each gesture, each placement of stone, each careful step was part of a continuous dialogue with the world, slow and deliberate, teaching patience, attention, and the gentle joy of noticing small wonders. You feel yourself matching the pace, moving gently, observing quietly. The rituals don't demand you mimic them, only that you pause and reflect. The air, water, and stone all seem to breathe together, offering a subtle meditation. Life is measured in care, in attention, in tiny acts that ripple outward without fanfare. And as you stand, the mist wrapping softly around your shoulders, you feel a deep calm settling in, the kind that grows slowly when you allow the past to speak softly rather than shout. You follow a faint trail of stones and driftwood, noticing subtle changes in the landscape. Here, the ingenuity of Mu's people reveals itself not in grand monuments, but in clever tools and delicate mechanisms. Small levers, remnants of pulley systems, and carefully carved channels suggest a society attentive to problem solving, where every device has a gentle purpose, as if the land itself whispered instructions and they simply listened. You bend down, running a finger along the edge of a carved groove, imagining it moving smoothly, quietly, without fuss or fanfare. One widely accepted historical fact is that the imagined people of MOU were often depicted by theorists as technologically adept for their time, creating tools and structures that harmonized with their environment rather than forcing it to their will. You can see it here in miniature, subtle examples. A stone wheel partially embedded in sand, a carved trough for channeling water, a fragment of a lever that hints at clever ingenuity. A lesser-known detail is that some stories suggest Mu's devices weren't purely functional. They incorporated artistry, rhythm, and even symbolic meaning. A lever might also represent a celestial line. A pulley might echo the curves of a wave. Historians still wonder whether this blending of utility and symbolism was intentional or a later embellishment. But either way, it creates a fascinatingly gentle, almost playful impression of ingenuity. You imagine the original users carefully placing these devices, adjusting angles, testing weights, refining them day by day. Nothing is rushed. There is no frustration, only patient experimentation. The humor comes when you picture someone struggling to lift a stone, grumbling softly under their breath, then stepping back with a satisfied grin when it finally slides into place. Small victories against inertia. Near a shallow pool, you notice the beginnings of a canal system, tiny channels directing water to where it's needed most, perhaps for irrigation, perhaps for cleaning, perhaps for subtle rituals. It's precise, without rigidity, flowing without effort. You follow the channels with your eyes, tracing the path from source to destination, feeling the quiet satisfaction of unseen labor done well. You spot a curious mechanism carved into stone, a rotating disc with notches, perhaps part of a measuring device, or a rudimentary calendar. You turn it gently, feeling how it might have moved for someone long gone. The tactile interaction connects you across centuries. You feel the practicality, the joy of clever thinking, and the gentle rhythm of daily life. A small breeze drifts across the ruins, carrying the faintest scent of salt and vegetation. You pause, imagining inhabitants observing the same weather, the same shifts in air and light, calibrating their tools, adjusting their craft. The harmony between human innovation and natural rhythm becomes apparent. It is soft, deliberate, respectful. Soft humor creeps in again as you imagine the occasional miscalculation, someone lifting a stone the wrong way, a pulley slipping, a lever refusing to cooperate. The laughter here isn't loud, just a private amusement. A reminder that progress is often measured in trial and error, gently celebrated rather than mourned. Another detail emerges. Some theorists suggested that Mo's mechanical ingenuity extended to navigation, with instruments designed to track tides, stars, or currents. Whether literal or mythical, you sense it in the careful alignment of stones and the subtle curvature of channels. A quiet ingenuity attuned to both earth and sea. Historians still debate whether such sophistication truly existed or is purely imaginative speculation. But in the soft rhythm of Mu, it feels entirely plausible. As the sun lowers, casting elongated shadows, you pause to take in the gentle architecture of utility. The devices, channels, and carvings all whisper the same lesson. Life here values attention, creativity, and subtle problem-solving. No force, no haste, no extravagance, just thoughtful, deliberate action. You breathe in deeply, feeling the soft satisfaction of understanding how a civilization could thrive quietly, ingeniously, and harmoniously. By now, you've begun to adopt their pace, moving slowly, noticing small patterns, appreciating the gentle ingenuity around you. You feel a quiet camaraderie with the past, a soft connection that doesn't demand applause or verification, only presence. Mu's technology is as much a meditation as a tool, teaching patience, observation, and the understated joy of solving small, real-world problems. You step carefully along the ruined pathways and notice subtle rises of earth, raised beds and terraces that suggest gardens once tended with care. The soil is soft beneath your fingers, surprisingly warm from the sun's gentle rays, carrying faint traces of herbs and plants long forgotten. The ingenuity of Mu extends here into agriculture, blending functionality with subtle artistry. Even centuries later, the patterns are evident. Spirals of planting beds, gently curved irrigation channels, and small retaining walls that follow the contours of the land as if the earth itself guided them. One widely accepted historical fact is that theorists imagined Mu as an advanced civilization capable of sophisticated land management, including terraced farming and engineered waterways that maximized productivity without harming the environment. You can feel it in every line of soil, every carefully sculpted mound. Practicality and beauty entwined so tightly you almost forget which is which. A lesser-known detail is that some accounts suggest Mu's gardens were not just for sustenance, but also for ceremonial purposes. Certain plants may have been selected for fragrance, color, or symbolism, and some plots may have aligned with the sun or stars to mark seasonal events. Historians still wonder whether these ceremonial aspects were central to their agriculture or a symbolic overlay added by later storytellers, but either way, it imbues the land with a gentle, playful intelligence. You crouch to observe a faint channel where water once flowed. You imagine the careful maintenance it required, the slow clearing of debris, the quiet satisfaction of watching irrigation reach each plot perfectly. You feel the hands that dug these channels long ago, hands that knew patience, precision, and respect for the natural rhythms of the environment. The humor surfaces when you imagine someone long ago tipping over a watering vessel and apologizing to the plants. An intimate comedy only the gardener could appreciate. Scattered remnants of stone tools and wooden stakes hint at a methodical approach. You notice patterns repeated across multiple garden areas, subtle differences for different types of crops. Mu's people seem to have understood the delicate balance between effort and outcome, between control and cooperation with nature. Each small design choice speaks to a culture that prioritized harmony over force, observation over speculation. The sunlight shifts, casting long, gentle shadows over raised beds and terraces, revealing the contours of the land more clearly. You notice faint carvings along the edges, possibly marking ownership, planting schedules, or perhaps offering simple decoration. You smile at the idea that beauty and utility were inseparable in this society, that even functional design could delight the eye. Another detail emerges. Some theorists suggest that Mu's agricultural systems may have included early forms of hydroengineering, redirecting seasonal floods to nourish crops while preventing erosion. Whether literal or speculative, it demonstrates a culture attentive to subtle forces of water and soil. Historians still debate whether these accounts describe actual practice or idealized memory. But, standing here, following the curves of channels with your fingers, it feels entirely plausible. You pause at a small clearing where you imagine children playing while adults worked. The paths through the garden are smooth, lined with small stones or herbs that release fragrance underfoot. You can almost hear the faint laughter, the gentle rhythm of daily life unfolding in a harmonious pattern. Life in Mu doesn't rush. It flows like water through terraces, calm, measured, and persistent. The breeze carries a faint scent of earth and faint sweetness, and you inhale slowly, letting the aroma settle you deeper into the landscape. Even in ruin, the gardens teach you a lesson. The softest attention to detail, the gentlest care for the land creates sustenance, beauty, and quiet resilience. You realize that agriculture in Mu was not just survival. It was a meditation, a rhythm that intertwined life, art, and necessity. Soft humor returns as you imagine someone accidentally stepping on a seedling and whispering apologies to the earth, or a mischievous child attempting to improve the irrigation channels, resulting in a minor flood that causes quiet exasperation. The small imperfections make the civilization feel alive, relatable, and intimately human, reminding you that perfection is neither expected nor desired. Attention, care, and intention are the real achievements. As the day softens toward evening, the terraces glow in muted gold, and the water channels shimmer faintly. You take a deep breath and let your attention linger on the gentle sophistication of these sunken gardens, appreciating the harmony between human intention and natural forces. In Mu, life is slow, deliberate, and attentive, and you, quietly observing, are beginning to move at the same pace, feeling each rhythm of soil, water, and wind. You wander from the gardens toward an open space where faded walls and stones suggest a communal gathering area. Here, the art, music, and storytelling of Mu once flourished. The air carries a subtle resonance, as if the space itself remembers the vibrations of past voices, the gentle strum of instruments, or the quiet hum of songs sung to mark the passage of time. You feel as though stepping into this area is like dipping your hand into a stream of memory, each ripple carrying faint traces of laughter, melody, and whispered tales. One widely accepted historical fact is that storytellers and musicians have long been central to imagined depictions of Mu. These figures preserved culture, passed knowledge, and entertained through oral traditions, echoing rhythms and stories across generations. Even without physical evidence, the idea persists that art was woven intimately into daily life. A lesser-known detail is that some accounts suggest Mu's art was interactive. Murals and carvings were positioned to create optical illusions depending on the sun's angle or the observer's movement, and music often accompanied movement through ceremonial spaces. Historians still wonder if these were intentional, highly sophisticated techniques or embellishments from later storytellers, but the effect is quietly enchanting. You crouch to examine faint carvings along a partially standing wall. Spirals, waves, and star-like shapes curl across the stone, delicate and precise. Perhaps they accompanied songs, perhaps stories, perhaps both. You can imagine a soft murmur of voices reciting tales, punctuated by laughter or the pluck of a stringed instrument, filling the air in a rhythm that eases the mind. Nearby, fragments of wooden instruments lie scattered, softened by centuries but still suggesting their form. A small harp, a flute, perhaps even simple percussion. You lift one, letting your imagination trace its tones, the vibrations soft in your hand. Humor flickers when you picture an ancient musician struggling to tune a harp underwater or a novice performer accidentally startling a bird with a stray note. Human moments captured across time. You notice patterns in how communal spaces are arranged. Stones set in circles or semicircles, raised platforms that likely served as stages, and alcoves that may have enhanced acoustics. These are not grand theatres. They are intimate spaces designed to enhance subtlety, reflection, and shared experience. Music and storytelling were not about grandeur, but about connection, attention, and gentle rhythm. A curious detail is that some theorists suggest Mu's musical traditions incorporated natural sounds, water, wind, and even the movement of people as instruments, blending human creativity with environmental harmony. Whether factual or imaginative, you sense it in the way the wind moves through columns, producing soft, almost melodic whistles. Historians still debate whether such acoustic designs existed intentionally or are later romanticizations. But standing here, the effect is undeniably soothing. The sun lowers, casting long, soft shadows over carved stone and broken wooden frames. You imagine children listening intently, adults nodding quietly, and elders sharing lessons through melody and story. The gentle humor of daily life returns. Perhaps someone forgot a verse, or a small animal wandered across the stage, causing polite giggles. These subtle moments humanize Mu, making it accessible and comforting rather than alien. You move slowly, tracing lines in carvings, imagining the soft vibration of voices, letting your fingers brush faint musical notes trapped in wood and stone. You notice how art, music, and storytelling intertwine seamlessly, each element supporting the other. This is culture as a lived experience, subtle and patient, designed to deepen awareness and attention rather than to impress or overwhelm. By the time you settle near a faded mural, the ambient light softens to muted lavender and gold. The ruins hum faintly with memory. You feel the rhythm of life in Mu, careful, measured, and attentive, where music and storytelling provide gentle structure, reassurance, and a soft, playful joy. You let your own breathing slow to match it, a gentle acknowledgement of centuries of quiet creativity, and feel a deeper connection to this vanished civilization. You leave the gentle hum of music behind and follow a winding path toward what seems like the outskirts of the main settlement. The fog has lifted just enough to reveal distant shores and faint silhouettes of other islands. Here, the traces of trade and exchange begin to emerge. Small docks, stone-lined landing spots, and remnants of lightweight boats suggest a society quietly connected to others across the waters. You feel the anticipation of discovery, The soft thrill of imagining trade without the noise and rush of modern ports. One widely accepted historical fact is that Mu, as theorized by 19th and early 20th century writers, was described as a hub of interland trade, linking resources, ideas, and cultures across the Pacific. Even if purely imaginative, this notion paints a picture of people aware of a broader world, moving delicately and deliberately between communities. A lesser-known detail is that some stories claim Mu's traders used intricate knot-based communication systems or subtle visual signals to coordinate exchanges, a kind of quiet semaphore that left little trace for archaeologists to find. Historians still wonder if these techniques existed in reality, were symbolic storytelling devices, or simply playful speculation, but you can sense the logic behind them. A gentle method of connecting communities without rushing or clamor. You crouch to inspect a small dock, stones smoothed by centuries of waves and human activity. Tiny carvings in the wood indicate boat placement, perhaps a gentle system of measuring water levels or tides. You imagine merchants carefully unloading baskets of fruit, shell jewelry, woven mats, and other goods, exchanging small smiles and polite nods. The humor comes naturally. A mischievous child slipping a trinket into a basket as a joke, or a bird snatching a bright shell mid-delivery, prompting gentle laughter rather than anger. Small boats, barely more than hollowed logs in imagination, drift quietly across calm waters. You trace their paths in the ripples, imagining skilled hands pushing against oars, adjusting sails, or gliding silently in tune with currents. Trade here is not about haste or profit. It's measured, attentive, and harmonious with nature. Each crossing strengthens ties, transmits knowledge, and reinforces a subtle rhythm that binds Mu's people together. Another intriguing detail is that Mu's imagined trading culture may have included ceremonial exchange. Specific rituals or gestures performed to honor agreements or blessings for safe travel. Whether historical or mythic, it evokes a civilization that valued mindfulness and respect over efficiency. Historians still debate the accuracy of these accounts, but the notion underscores the gentle, intentional lifestyle that persists across the ruins. The mist shifts, brushing against your arms as you kneel beside a water-worn stone. You notice faint grooves, perhaps guides for ropes or mooring lines, evidence of careful planning and observation. It is these small, almost invisible details that convey the sophistication of Mu's trade networks. You sense that connection was as much about observing and honoring the environment as it was about exchanging goods. You imagine the smells, salt, seaweed, and the faint scent of tropical fruit. Sounds are subtle. A paddle gliding through water, a soft call across the waves, laughter carried lightly by the breeze. Humor surfaces quietly again, imagining someone trying to negotiate a trade while balancing on a slippery dock, nearly tipping into the water, and the others chuckling gently instead of scolding. These small moments give life to the idea of Mu, humanizing a civilization long imagined. As the day shifts toward evening, golden light glances off the water, highlighting patterns of channels, docks, and stone markers. You realize that even in Mu's, people were careful observers, harmonizing trade with the flow of tides, the patterns of stars, and the subtle pulse of daily life. The lesson is soft but clear. Connection requires attention, patience, and respect, an ethos that leaves traces in the ruins, echoes in the mist, and a gentle imprint on your mind. You pause, letting the rhythm of the waves and your imagination align. Trade, exchange, and shared knowledge flow quietly here, reminding you that life can be deliberate, social, and harmonious without hurry or fanfare. You breathe slowly, matching the pulse of Mu, feeling a subtle but profound sense of calm wash over you, carrying you further into the soft embrace of history. You continue along the gently sloping terrain, noticing subtle rises that suggest communal kitchens or shared cooking areas. The scent of the sea mingles faintly with imagined herbs, roasted grains, and a hint of smoke long dissipated, leaving only the impression of warmth and nourishment. The arrangement of stones and low walls suggests thoughtful organization, spaces for preparing food, washing tools, and perhaps even subtle social rituals woven into daily meals. You crouch and imagine the careful placement of each pot, the rhythm of chopping, stirring, and sharing without hurry or fuss. One widely accepted historical fact is that theorists often depicted Mu as a civilization that cultivated food with both skill and ceremony. Combining practicality with gentle aesthetic sensibilities, you can sense this in the deliberate arrangement of cooking spaces, the small terraces for drying or storing ingredients, and the careful integration of natural elements like water flow or sun exposure. A lesser-known detail is that some accounts suggest Mu's kitchens might have been places for both nourishment and quiet storytelling. Elders could pass down tales, songs, and subtle lessons while supervising preparation, blending sustenance and culture in a single act. Historians still debate whether this was practical tradition or imaginative projection, but you feel the logic of combining utility and culture. It is quietly elegant. You notice the faint imprint of utensils, shallow bowls carved from stone, wooden spatulas smoothed over time, and tiny containers, perhaps for spices, seeds, or ceremonial offerings. Each object carries a hint of the people who used them, their movements deliberate, careful, and mindful. Humor flickers in your mind. Perhaps a mischievous child flipped a small pot accidentally, or someone carried a bowl precariously, eliciting gentle laughter rather than frustration. Life, even in imagined Mu, seems to balance order and spontaneity gracefully. You crouch beside a stone hearth and trace the faint channels where fire might have been contained. The warmth from the imagined flames reaches beyond heat. Conveys connection, sustenance, and the quiet pulse of life. Cooking here is both necessity and art, each action soft, intentional, and attentive to the environment. Another intriguing detail is that some theorists proposed Mu's inhabitants used subtle smoke signals or aromatic offerings during meal preparation, blending culinary work with communication or ritual. Whether factual or mythical, you can imagine the gentle curl of fragrant smoke rising, carrying messages, prayers, or quiet observations across space. Historians still question the veracity of these practices, but the imagery feels natural, comforting, and reflective of attentive living. You notice small, circular stone tables, perfectly proportioned for communal eating. You imagine neighbors gathering around these tables, sharing food, stories, and laughter. The interaction is soft, deliberate, and reciprocal, reinforcing the rhythm of life in this imagined society. Humor returns gently. Perhaps a goat wandered into the garden to pilfer herbs, prompting quiet exasperation rather than anger, or a child tried to help stir a pot, resulting in a minor but harmless mishap. The sun dips lower, casting elongated shadows across cooking terraces and storage spaces. You trace the outlines with your eyes, feeling the gentle pulse of daily life, preparation, consumption, and sharing, all interwoven into a rhythm of calm attentiveness. The faint sounds of distant waves, birds, and wind harmonize with the imagined kitchen bustle, reinforcing the delicate balance of work, nourishment, and culture. A small water channel trickles nearby, carrying away excess or supplying gentle refreshment. You follow it with your fingers, marveling at the thoughtfulness of integrating natural resources into everyday tasks. Everything here reflects a delicate choreography, attention, respect, and quiet efficiency. Even in imagination, Mu demonstrates that life's simplest acts, cooking, cleaning, sharing, can be meditative, harmonious, and profoundly satisfying. As evening light softens into muted gold and violet, you take a deep breath, letting the gentle cadence of Mu's culinary life sink into your consciousness. Each careful gesture, each subtle rhythm, leaves a soft imprint, teaching observation, mindfulness, and the quiet joy of connecting with others through everyday acts. You feel a sense of calm satisfaction, the gentle pulse of life resonating through your own heartbeat as you pause beside the imagined hearth. Watching the memory of Mu unfold quietly around you, you continue along the gently sloping terrain, noticing subtle rises that suggest communal kitchens or shared cooking areas. The scent of the sea mingles faintly with imagined herbs, roasted grains, and a hint of smoke long dissipated, leaving only the impression of warmth and nourishment. The arrangement of stones and low walls suggests thoughtful organization, spaces for preparing food, washing tools, and perhaps even subtle social rituals woven into daily meals. You crouch and imagine the careful placement of each pot, the rhythm of chopping, stirring, and sharing without hurry or fuss. One widely accepted historical fact is that theorists often depicted Mu as a civilization that cultivated food with both skill and ceremony. Combining practicality with gentle aesthetic sensibilities, you can sense this in the deliberate arrangement of cooking spaces, the small terraces for drying or storing ingredients, and the careful integration of natural elements like water flow or sun exposure. A lesser-known detail is that some accounts suggest Mu's kitchens might have been places for both nourishment and quiet storytelling. Elders could pass down tales, songs, and subtle lessons while supervising preparation, blending sustenance and culture in a single act. Historians still debate whether this was practical tradition or imaginative projection, but you feel the logic of combining utility and culture. It is quietly elegant. You notice the faint imprint of utensils, shallow bowls carved from stone, wooden spatulas smoothed over time, and tiny containers, perhaps for spices, seeds, or ceremonial offerings. Each object carries a hint of the people who used them, their movements deliberate, careful, and mindful. Humor flickers in your mind. Perhaps a mischievous child flipped a small pot accidentally, or someone carried a bowl precariously, eliciting gentle laughter rather than frustration. Life, even in imagined Mu, seems to balance order and spontaneity gracefully. You crouch beside a stone hearth and trace the faint channels where fire might have been contained. The warmth from the imagined flames reaches beyond heat. Conveys connection, sustenance, and the quiet pulse of life. Cooking here is both necessity and art, each action soft, intentional, and attentive to the environment. Another intriguing detail is that some theorists proposed Mu's inhabitants used subtle smoke signals or aromatic offerings during meal preparation, blending culinary work with communication or ritual. Whether factual or mythical, you can imagine the gentle curl of fragrant smoke rising, carrying messages, prayers, or quiet observations across space. Historians still question the veracity of these practices, but the imagery feels natural, comforting, and reflective of attentive living. You notice small, circular stone tables, perfectly proportioned for communal eating. You imagine neighbors gathering around these tables, sharing food, stories, and laughter. The interaction is soft, deliberate, and reciprocal, reinforcing the rhythm of life in this imagined society. Humor returns gently. Perhaps a goat wandered into the garden to pilfer herbs, prompting quiet exasperation rather than anger, or a child tried to help stir a pot, resulting in a minor but harmless mishap. The sun dips lower, casting elongated shadows across cooking terraces and storage spaces. You trace the outlines with your eyes, feeling the gentle pulse of daily life, preparation, consumption, and sharing, all interwoven into a rhythm of calm attentiveness. The faint sounds of distant waves, birds, and wind harmonize with the imagined kitchen bustle, reinforcing the delicate balance of work, nourishment, and culture. A small water channel trickles nearby, carrying away excess or supplying gentle refreshment. You follow it with your fingers, marveling at the thoughtfulness of integrating natural resources into everyday tasks. Everything here reflects a delicate choreography, attention, respect, and quiet efficiency. Even in imagination, Mu demonstrates that life's simplest acts, cooking, cleaning, sharing, can be meditative, harmonious, and profoundly satisfying. As evening light softens into muted gold and violet, you take a deep breath, letting the gentle cadence of Mu's culinary life sink into your consciousness. Each careful gesture, each subtle rhythm, leaves a soft imprint, teaching observation, mindfulness, and the quiet joy of connecting with others through everyday acts. You feel a sense of calm satisfaction, the gentle pulse of life resonating through your own heartbeat as you pause beside the imagined hearth, watching the memory of Mu unfold quietly around you. You continue along the gently rising terraces, and the terrain begins to suggest spaces devoted to learning, observation, and quiet reflection. Faint outlines of what might have been libraries, lecture areas, or study nooks appear amid the ruined small alcoves, sunken floors, and shelves carved directly into stone walls. The air feels dense with thought, and the subtle rustle of imagined pages seems to linger, as if the past itself is murmuring ideas softly into the present. One widely accepted historical fact is that theorists imagined Mu as a civilization attentive to knowledge and learning, fostering education through observation, experience, and oral transmission. Even if largely mythological, this depiction underscores the value placed on reflection, curiosity, and deliberate cultivation of understanding. A lesser-known detail is that some accounts suggest Mu's knowledge centers were multi-purpose spaces for astronomy, mathematics, arts, and practical skills blended seamlessly. Historians still wonder whether such integrated learning existed or is a romanticized projection. But the notion fits neatly into the gentle rhythm of life. Here, curiosity, care, and observation intertwined with daily practice. You crouch beside a carved stone shelf, noticing faint grooves where scrolls or tablets may have rested. You imagine someone slowly unrolling a parchment, tracing diagrams of stars or sketches of plants, whispering instructions to a student. Humor flickers as you picture a novice misreading a diagram, then sheepishly adjusting it while the teacher offers a wry, gentle smile. Learning, even in Mu, seems to balance seriousness with subtle playfulness. Nearby, shallow depressions in the floor suggest seating arrangements or spaces for observation. You imagine individuals gathering quietly, sharing insights, or debating minor details, voices soft and respectful. The setting emphasizes reflection over confrontation, curiosity over competition. Even the architecture seems designed to facilitate calm engagement, encouraging attention, patience, and mindfulness. Another intriguing detail is that some theorists proposed Mu's observational spaces included rudimentary astronomical toolstone, sightlines, carved markers, and subtle alignments to celestial bodies. Whether these were literal instruments or imaginative constructs, they reflect a culture attuned to natural rhythms. connecting daily life to the passage of stars and seasons. Historians still debate the accuracy of these claims, but they create a vivid sense of attentive harmony. You trace the edges of a small alcove where light might have fallen on a tablet or diagram, imagining a student leaning in, absorbing patterns, and making notes. The sun glints through a partially collapsed roof, highlighting subtle grooves and worn edges. You sense the intentionality behind every detail, placement, illumination, and function designed to promote gentle learning rather than rigid instruction. The ambient sounds are soft, distant waves, faint bird calls, and a whisper of wind brushing over stone. In your imagination, this becomes the perfect background for quiet study. Humor surfaces against someone trying to take notes while a curious bird tugs at their scroll, or a student dropping a pebble accidentally into a channel used for measurement. In Mu, even minor disruptions are met with calm attention and soft amusement. You notice the rhythm of the space, light, shadow, sound, and texture working together to create a serene environment. Knowledge here is tactile, visual, and auditory, emphasizing multisensory engagement and careful observation. The ruins themselves seem to teach patience. Study the grooves. Notice the faint alignments, and learn through gentle repetition. As the day softens toward evening, the ruins glow in muted lavender and gold, and you pause, letting the imagined environment settle around you. Learning in Mu is not a race, but a rhythm, deliberate, slow, and attentive. You inhale deeply, letting the gentle cadence of study, observation, and reflection fill your mind. Knowledge, you realize, is not just in books or tablets, but in patience, observation, and the quiet joy of noticing small, interconnected patterns that whisper across time. You walk toward a slightly elevated ridge where the remains of observatories and lookout points become visible. Stones carefully aligned, small carved platforms, and gentle terraces suggest spaces designed for watching the skies and the sea. The air is crisp here, carrying faint salt and mist from distant waves, and the light shifts softly, glancing off edges and hollows. You pause, letting your eyes follow the horizon, imagining someone centuries ago scanning the skies for guidance, for timing, for subtle patterns that would influence daily life. One widely accepted historical fact is that theorists often depicted Mu as an observant civilization, attentive to celestial and environmental patterns for practical and ritual purposes. Even in myth, the people of Mu are imagined as deeply aware of tides, stars, and weather, integrating these observations into agriculture, navigation, and social rhythm. A lesser-known detail is that some accounts suggest Mu's observatories included tactile instruments, grooves, rotating discs, and carved markers to track time, tides, and star positions, blending sensory experience with technical knowledge. Historians still wonder whether these structures were functional, symbolic, or part of later embellishment, but imagining them as practical tools adds a quiet depth to the landscape. You crouch beside a low platform, tracing carved lines that may have guided sighting instruments or marked solar cycles. It's easy to imagine an observer here, notebook in hand, noting subtle movements of sun and moon, measuring angles, and humming softly in concentration. Humor flickers in your mind. Perhaps someone misaligned a sighting stone, causing mild confusion, only to laugh quietly when the error is corrected, blending precision with gentle humanity. Nearby, faint traces of pathways connect different observational points. You follow them slowly, noticing how each terrace and platform seems designed for gradual ascent, for thoughtful movement, and for an unobstructed view of the heavens. The arrangement reflects an intimate understanding of environment and rhythm, a practice of attentiveness rather than haste. Another detail emerges. Some theorists suggest Mu's observations informed not only navigation and agriculture, but also storytelling, ritual, and social cohesion. Patterns in the stars may have inspired myths, guided ceremonies, and reinforced communal memory. Historians still debate how much of this is plausible versus speculative. But the interplay between observation and culture is a comforting, harmonious idea. You glance at faintly carved grooves that may have aligned with solstices or equinoxes. Imagining ancient observers adjusting markers or noting the changing light instills a gentle sense of continuity. The soft humor of everyday life returns. Perhaps a playful apprentice nudged a marker slightly, earning a quiet scolding or a wry smile from a teacher. These subtle imperfections humanized the experience, making it relatable and serene. The wind brushes over the ridges, carrying the scent of brine and flowering shrubs. You breathe in slowly, letting the air anchor you to the landscape and the imagined history of observation and reflection. Each groove, platform, and terrace conveys care, patience, and attentiveness, the hallmarks of a civilization attuned to rhythm, pattern, and gentle curiosity. You notice the rhythm of the spaces. Each observatory leads naturally to the next, creating a soft cadence that guides your movement and attention. Light, shadow, wind, and subtle architectural design converge to create a meditative experience, where observation itself is an act of mindfulness. As the day edges toward evening, you pause at the highest point, gazing at the faint shimmer of distant waters and the slowly dimming sky. The imagined observers of Mu, you realize, practiced attention not for spectacle but for understanding, reflection, and quiet harmony. You inhale deeply, aligning your own awareness with theirs, and feel a soft sense of calm settle over your mind. As though the rhythm of observation has seeped into your own heartbeat. The ridge gradually slopes back toward the heart of Mu, leading you to what appears to have been a center for communal art, meditation, and quiet celebration. Stone platforms, low walls, and faint traces of mosaic-like arrangements suggest spaces where people gathered not for spectacle, but for gentle reflection and shared creativity. The light here is softer, filtering through broken stone arches, and the air carries a faint, earthy aroma, as if the soil itself remembers the footsteps of those who paused, painted, or whispered here. One widely accepted historical fact is that theorists often imagined Mu as a culture that valued harmony, reflection, and artistic expression in daily life. Integrating these practices into both private and communal spaces, the ruins hint at ritual, art, and meditation intertwined seamlessly with the rhythm of everyday existence. A lesser-known detail is that some accounts suggest these spaces doubled as sensory gardens of sorts, where patterns, textures, and scents were arranged deliberately to induce calm, focus, or contemplation. Historians still wonder if this concept was ever realized practically, or if it belongs entirely to imaginative reconstructions. But standing here, it feels entirely plausible, almost meditative. You kneel beside a faintly carved mosaic, noticing concentric circles and flowing lines etched into stone, softened by centuries of wind and rain. The designs seem to move as your gaze passes over them, like subtle ripples in water. Humor surfaces as you imagine someone attempting to improve a mosaic with a misplaced stone, eliciting a gentle chuckle rather than frustration, a reminder that creativity in Mu was playful as well as purposeful. Nearby, shallow depressions in the ground suggest seating, observation points, or platforms for small instruments. You trace their outlines, imagining quiet gatherings where participants listened to wind, birds, and soft water flows, learning to integrate natural sounds into meditation, storytelling, or song. Life here values observation and patience, not performance or rush. Another detail emerges. Some theorists speculate that Mu's creative spaces included early forms of sound mapping arrangements of stones, water channels, and carvings that subtly enhanced acoustics or produced gentle tones when wind or movement interacted with them. Whether factual or imaginative, the effect is a quiet orchestra of nature and human design. Historians still debate its existence, but you feel the rhythm in your own breathing, matching the imagined soundscape. The gentle light shifts across platforms and mosaics, highlighting curves, depressions, and patterns. You notice faint pathways connecting areas, perhaps designed to encourage slow exploration, observation, and reflection. Movement here is deliberate, almost ceremonial in its gentleness. Humor returns quietly. Perhaps a visitor stumbled into a water channel by accident, prompting nothing more than soft laughter and playful teasing. You pause to imagine the faint aroma of herbs or incense lingering in the air, used subtly to enhance focus or relaxation. The combination of tactile art, visual patterns, and scent creates a multisensory environment that encourages mindfulness. You run your fingers lightly over a carved spiral, noticing how the grooves guide your touch naturally, almost meditative in their simplicity. The surrounding landscape hums softly with memory. Distant waves, faint breezes, and the soft rustle of leaves forming a quiet, harmonious background. You feel the gentle pulse of creativity and reflection, noticing how attention, care, and playful experimentation seem inseparable in Mu. Each gesture, pattern, and design teaches patience and mindfulness, reinforcing the culture's quiet values. As the sun dips toward the horizon, golden light washes over mosaics, platforms, and terraces, creating a soft, immersive glow. You inhale deeply, letting the imagined rhythm of reflection, creativity, and gentle observation settle over your mind. In Mu, life was not rushed. It was slow, deliberate, and attentive, and by walking these imagined spaces, you feel yourself attuned to the same calm, intentional cadence that shaped daily life centuries ago. You descend from the creative terraces toward the water's edge, where the faint remnants of ceremonial spaces suggest gatherings tied to both land and sea. Stones arranged in gentle arcs, shallow depressions, and faintly carved symbols hint at rituals designed to honor cycles of tides, stars, or seasonal harvests. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of salt, driftwood, and subtle vegetation, and the soft lapping of imagined waves against stones fills the space with calm rhythm. You pause, letting your attention wander over the small, intentional details. One widely accepted historical fact is that theorists often depicted Mu as a society deeply connected to natural cycles, with ceremonies and rituals marking celestial, agricultural, and seasonal events. Even in myth, these practices reflect attentiveness to the world, blending utility, observation, and quiet celebration. A lesser-known detail is that some accounts suggest Mu's ceremonial spaces may have incorporated water, wind, and subtle echo effects as integral parts of the ritual. Using nature itself as a participant, historians still debate whether such elaborate environmental integration existed or is purely imaginative, but the thought creates a soft sense of harmony and deliberate observation. You crouch beside a stone platform partially worn by time, tracing shallow grooves that may have guided ritual movements or positioned ceremonial objects. You imagine participants stepping carefully, following a choreography known only to them, movements soft and deliberate. Humor flickers when you picture someone stepping slightly out of line, prompting a quiet, good-natured correction. Rather than scolding, ritual here blends attention with playfulness. Nearby, shallow channels suggest water was directed thoughtfully through the ceremonial area, perhaps to cleanse tools, mark timing, or produce soothing sounds. You follow the paths with your fingers, imagining the gentle flow and the care taken to integrate these simple systems. The attention to detail is both practical and symbolic, reinforcing the connection between people and environment. Another detail emerges. Theorists suggest that Mu's ceremonies may have included subtle storytelling or music, synchronized with natural rhythms, soft chants, instruments, or gestures designed to honor the elements. Whether historical or imagined, this layering of sensory experience creates a serene, immersive environment. Historians still question the authenticity, but the scene feels plausible, quiet, and meditative. You notice faint seating arrangements along terraces and stones, designed for observers or participants to pause, reflect, or engage quietly. Movement is deliberate, rhythmic, and gentle. Observing here, you feel the slow pulse of shared attention, a pattern repeated over centuries. Humor returns subtly. A playful child might have slipped into a shallow channel, causing gentle laughter rather than panic, adding warmth to the imagined ceremony. The sun lowers, casting a soft gold glow across the stones, channels, and terraces. Shadows stretch gracefully, highlighting patterns of human intention blended seamlessly with natural topography. You feel the careful choreography of life here. Observation, attention, and quiet interaction with the environment, all designed to foster harmony, reflection, and mindfulness. You pause to breathe in the mixture of sea air, earthy scent, and imagined incense, letting the rhythm of ceremonial life settle into your own heartbeat. Mu's ceremonies, you realize, were not loud or showy. They were measured, delicate, and attentive, celebrating connection and observation over spectacle. You feel a gentle alignment with their pace, the ebb and flow of movement, and the soft harmony of nature and culture intertwined. As twilight deepens, the ceremonial space glows faintly, and you take a moment to let your gaze sweep over channels, platforms, and stones. The imagined rituals, subtle and precise, leave a quiet impression. Attention, respect, and calm observation are the core values. You inhale slowly, letting the serene rhythm of Mu's ceremonial life merge with your own awareness, preparing you for the final stage of tonight's gentle journey. You move from the ceremonial terraces back toward the central heart of Mu, where the remains of living spaces, streets, and quiet courtyards form a gentle mosaic of daily life. The air is soft, carrying hints of imagined fires, herbs, and the lingering warmth of sun-soaked stones. You notice how thoughtfully everything is arranged, pathways that curve gently rather than cutting straight lines, homes built low to the ground for comfort and insulation, and small courtyards that encourage quiet gathering and reflection. Every detail conveys patience, care, and deliberate attention. One widely accepted historical fact is that theorists often imagined Mu as a society where urban planning reflected harmony with nature. Buildings, roads, and communal spaces were arranged to maximize natural light, ventilation, and human comfort, blending functionality with aesthetic subtlety. You can feel it in the gentle arcs of streets and the smooth transitions between courtyards and homes. A lesser-known detail is that some reconstructions suggest Mu streets may have included subtle sensory markers, patterns of stones, or gentle grooves that guided movement, indicated boundaries, or even produced soft sounds when walked upon. Historians still debate whether this is historical or imaginative, but it paints a picture of a society attentive to both utility and gentle aesthetics. You walk along a path that slopes slightly upward, your fingers brushing smooth stones as you go. The faint traces of homes reveal small hearths, carved storage niches, and tiny gardens tucked into corners. Each space feels human, lived in, and playful in subtle ways. Humor flickers when you imagine a child chasing a pet across the courtyard or someone accidentally spilling a basket of fruit, prompting quiet laughter instead of frustration. Life here feels intimate and warm. Nearby, faint impressions of steps and platforms suggest areas for sitting, socializing, or watching children play. You crouch to observe them, imagining neighbors greeting one another softly, exchanging small gifts, or sharing stories from the day. The rhythm of life is slow, deliberate, and reflective, encouraging calm observation and interaction rather than hurry or spectacle. Another detail emerges. Some theorists suggest Mu streets may have incorporated small water channels for drainage or ambient sound, blending functionality with sensory harmony. Walking along them, you imagine the soft trickle of water accompanying the gentle rhythm of footsteps, creating a subtle background melody. Historians still question the reality of this, but it evokes a vivid sense of calm urban life. You notice how the homes and communal areas are oriented to catch sunlight while providing shade where needed. Every doorway, courtyard, and path seems designed to harmonize with natural light and airflow, creating spaces that are comfortable, beautiful, and meditative. Humor appears quietly again. A resident might misplace a tool in the sunshine, prompting a soft, knowing sigh and a playful grin from a neighbor. Small imperfections make the imagined world relatable and human. The faint scent of herbs and fire lingers as the sun dips toward the horizon. You pause in a courtyard, letting the gentle, imagined hum of life wash over you. Children playing softly, water trickling in channels, wind brushing through carefully planted greenery. The civilization of Mu, though lost, seems to pulse with the quiet rhythms of attentive living, where every movement, interaction, and design choice reflects care, harmony, and gentle mindfulness. As twilight settles, the ruins glow in muted golds and purples. You trace the pathways with your eyes one last time, noting the subtle interplay of function, beauty, and social rhythm. Even in imagined spaces, Mu embodies a society attuned to observation, harmony, and the delicate cadence of daily life. You inhale slowly, letting the ambient calm, quiet laughter, and attentive energy of Mu seep into your own awareness. You take a final stroll along the main path, letting the soft echoes of footsteps, water, and wind accompany you. The warmth of imagined hearths, the gentle patterns of architecture, and the subtle presence of communal life envelop you. You feel a profound sense of calm, having traveled through centuries of imagined daily life, ritual, creativity, and observation. The pulse of Mu aligns with your own breathing, leaving a soft imprint of harmony and patience on your mind. As the evening deepens, you settle near a small, sunken courtyard. The light fades to gentle violet and gold, and you allow yourself to be fully present in this imagined world. The civilization may be lost, but the rhythms of attentive life, subtle humor, and quiet beauty remain vivid in your mind. You breathe slowly, feeling the pulse of Mu settle into your own heartbeat, preparing your mind for rest, reflection, and the gentle descent into sleep. You settle into a comfortable spot, letting your body sink softly into the space around you. The imagined streets, terraces, and courtyards of Mu fade into gentle shadows, leaving only the soft pulse of memory, light, and rhythm. Each breath becomes slower, longer, and more deliberate, echoing the calm cadence of a civilization that moved with intention and quiet attentiveness. The gentle breeze brushes past your skin in imagination, carrying the faint scent of salt, herbs, and sun-warmed stone, wrapping you in a cocoon of sensory calm. close your eyes and allow the faint sounds of Mu to drift through your awareness. Distant water channels trickling softly, the quiet hum of wind through terraces, and the gentle murmur of voices in playful conversation. Each sound is soft, unobtrusive, and comforting, like the lullaby of a world remembered more in feeling than in form. Tiny bursts of imagined laughter or the gentle scrape of tools against stone appear and fade like passing clouds, leaving only warmth and serenity behind. The colors of the day dissolve into muted violet and gold, the soft glow of twilight settling over terraces, pathways, and ceremonial spaces. You imagine the smooth stones under your fingers, the gentle patterns of mosaics and carvings, and the meticulous care of daily life. Each detail, whether faint or vivid, encourages a deepening sense of presence, mindfulness, and calm. The pulse of Mu seeps gently into your own awareness, a rhythm you can carry with you as you drift further toward rest. Breathe in slowly, imagining the warmth of a sunlit courtyard or the cool hush of an observatory terrace. Breathe out, releasing tension, distraction, and lingering thoughts. Feel yourself aligned with the quiet attentiveness of Mu, patient, deliberate, and harmonized with both environment and imagination. Humor and gentle humanity from centuries past linger softly, reassuring you that life, even imagined, is meant to be observed, appreciated, and enjoyed with calm attentiveness. Let the imagined rhythm of steps, water, and wind continue, soft and unhurried, guiding your awareness into a gentle, reflective space. Each inhalation carries a sense of curiosity and gentle wonder. Each exhalation releases weight, tension, and the need to control. You are present, safe, and quietly connected to a civilization that, though lost, teaches patience, observation, and the serene joy of mindful living. Now allow the pulse of Mu to dissolve into the quiet of your own body and mind. Visualize the ruins fading softly into the mist of memory, the pathways, terraces, and courtyards merging with gentle twilight. Let your breathing and heartbeat synchronize with the soft rhythm of calmness, feeling grounded, safe, and at ease. Each sensation, memory, and imagined detail becomes a lullaby, carrying you closer to the edge of sleep, where dreams flow gently without effort or urgency. Feel your body relax completely, from the crown of your head to the tips of your toes. The warmth of imagined hearths, the gentle sway of leaves and wind, and the soft rhythm of daily life in Mu leave their quiet imprint, a soothing embrace of time, place, and gentle attentiveness. Allow yourself to drift in this calm, timeless space, where curiosity, reflection, and quiet joy linger softly, guiding you into a deep, restorative rest.